So what we're seeing, therefore, is a decline in economics being the primary issue and the rise instead of a set of political arguments about whether or not you want to go for a global world or a more traditional national and local world.
Is the world experiencing a political realignment? I posed this question to Stephen Davies, an economic historian with the Institute of Economic Affairs in the United Kingdom. What follows is a short extract from a longer conversation on my podcast, Solutions with David Ansara. If you enjoyed this discussion, you might want to check out the full conversation with Stephen Davies. That's linked in the description below. Enjoy. Okay, Stephen, so we're essentially dealing with two parallel processes. There's a kind of fundamental political disruption, but then also the underlying economics is very unstable, being propped up by stimulus. And earlier you were saying that politics is fundamentally binary, and you kind of drew that distinction that has characterized the previous alignment of essentially a debate about the appropriate role of the state and economics. But now that binary is looking like it's changing. In what way is that change manifesting, and how are we seeing this playing out across societies around the world?
Well, we are seeing the emergence of a new binary. Now, the new binary, one easy way to describe this new binary division is that it's not so much about economics, it's about identity. And in particular, the fundamental division is no longer between people who like the state intervening in the economy versus free marketeers. It's between people who like and enjoy and support cosmopolitan globalism, an open world with lots of rapid change, with lots of people moving around. And on the other side, people who find that highly threatening and who want to reassert the local, the particular, and above all, the national. And what this is leading to is the emergence of a new kind of politics, which is misdescribed, in my view, as populist. And this new kind of politics I would rather describe as national collectivist. And what it does is to combine a strongly dirigist economic policy with a strong hostility to globalization and globalism. So things like very strong controls on immigration, possibly protectionism, a national economic or industrial strategy, an emphasis upon the nation state as opposed to supranational forms of governance, and an emphasis upon the economic role of government, of the national government, as promoting things like national champions and a national industrial policy. And this is the kind of politics of Marine Le Pen, the AfD in Germany, Sweden Democrats in Sweden, the Brothers of Italy in Italy, or indeed Salvini's party La Lega. You can see it popping up everywhere. And these parties typically start off as being free market parties. They, if you like, advocate what you might call capitalism in one country. But the logic of politics pushes them much more in a dirigist kind of state interventionist direction, because that's what their voters want. Because increasingly they're appealing to what I would call the dark quadrant that I mentioned earlier, the consistent authoritarian voters who are both traditional-minded and authoritarian, and also left of centre on economics. And that's becoming increasingly their kind of core vote. So what we're seeing, therefore, is a decline in economics being the primary issue and the rise instead of a set of political arguments about whether or not you want to go for a global world or a more traditional national and local world.
Enjoying this analysis? Click here to sign up for our 30-day free trial for more content from the CIA.
It's worth saying, though, that this is grows out of and reflects real-world physical divisions. In particular, it reflects two divisions. One is the division that you see all over the world between large, globally connected, and typically highly successful metropolitan cities, and on the other hand, rural areas, small towns, and decaying ex-industrial areas. And you can see this everywhere. You can see it, for example, in Turkey, where Erdogan gets his support mainly from rural Anatolia and the recent migrants from that part of Turkey to Istanbul. He never does well in either the Aegean coast or in Ankara, the big metropolitan city capital. So that's one division. The other division that we can see is between the kind of people who live and work in those global metropolitan cities, which is essentially graduates who work in globally traded sectors like IT, finance, long-distance trade-related activity and the like, and who are typically younger, and the slightly older and less educated people who live in the small towns and the rural areas. And that reflects a different position in the meritocratic labour market that's come to dominate the economy of most developed countries and quite a few developing ones as well.
All right, so Stephen, what you have also is political fragmentation, and we're speaking on the 28th of September, and the Social Democratic Party in Germany has narrowly beat out its competitors. I think it got about 25% of the vote. Hardly a resounding victory for the center left there. But when I survey those election results, see 11.5% or so for the Liberals, the Conservatives also around 24%. So, I mean, surely that's competitive democracy in action. And what some people might bemoan as fragmentation is really competition around ideas. And surely that's a good thing. So, I mean, perhaps in some ways, this fragmentation that we're experiencing is a necessary break from the kind of orthodoxies of the past, which were perhaps getting a bit stale and rigid.
I agree completely with that. I think that in one sense, realignments are always a good thing, because the reason why an old alignment ultimately passes, and this happens every 40 to 50 years, by the way, is because many of the arguments become stale. They become exhausted. The issue around which the alignment is structured either doesn't matter to people anymore, or it's one where one side has decisively won the argument. And so a new kind of argument comes to appear as the big issue that people disagree about. And when you have a realignment like that, what is called fragmentation tends to be a side effect of that, because it puts existing party alliances under enormous strain. Because what you find is that you were on the same side of the old alignment as this other person over there, but now you find that you're on opposite sides of the new aligning issue. So people who were allies suddenly find themselves as opponents, and people who were originally rivals find themselves as friends. And in terms of the voting blocks, what you find is that formerly stable party coalitions break up. Now, in a country with a proportional representation system like Germany, what this means is that the very large voter coalitions that existed in the post-war period for the CDU, CSU, and the SPD, they break up, and you get the growth of new parties, the Greens, the AfD, and the Liberals, who got 11.5%, when historically, back in the days when they were always in government, they always used to barely make 5%. So they're also doing well. And this is a good thing, in my view, because it means that you get a wider expression of views. What will happen eventually, though, is that these, in countries like that, is that these new collections of parties will still broadly form into two large, like camps, if you will. And you can see this in countries like the Netherlands, for example, which has always had a very fragmented multi-party system. It's more tricky in countries with a first-past-the-post electoral system, like Great Britain or the United States or India or Canada, because in those countries, the arguments tend to take place within parties. And you either get splits in those parties, or you get a transformation of the party, in which the party name remains the same, and it's a lot of the same people, but the ideology and even the voting base of the party is quite radically transformed. And you can see this happening in Britain, where the Conservative Party is quite clearly moving in the direction of becoming a party of the working class plus rural people and a certain part of the upper middle class, whereas the Labour Party is increasingly becoming less and less the party of the working class and more the party of younger people and metropolitans, essentially. Something similar happening in the United States and also in India. So that the same process is going on in the two different kinds of country, but it takes a different form because of the way the electoral system works.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this discussion, you might want to check out the full interview with Stephen Davies. That's linked over here. And I'd also be grateful if you could subscribe to my other channel. That's linked over here. My name is David Ansara. Until next time, take care.